I guess to start, my introduction to you is actually interesting because I'm from St. Louis, uh, and whenever I first started reading comics as a kid, I never really got into any specific fandom or anything like that. I read things like Archie comics, um, Star Wars, uh, things like that. It wasn't until I was an adult whenever I started to break back into reading comics and especially writing comics. And whenever I first started trying to take seriously writing comics, I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to sort of the big publishers, grab the books that I like or sound interesting, and try to just see how my stuff compares to what has been written. And the two books I grabbed to start off with was The Beauty by Jeremy Hahn and Cold Spots by you. And I didn't know either one of you guys, hadn't read any of your work before that. Um, and I think I downloaded them on Comixology. So I can't even, I was like, I know I have these books somewhere. And then I was like, oh, they're digital. And then after reading that, I was like, both these guys are basically from where I'm at. So and both write horror. I was just like, that's super interesting. So then I was like, okay, now I'm going to dive further. And of course, I read The Empty Man. And it's like about conspiracies around St. Louis or like it. And I was just like, this is wild. So that was sort of my introduction to you as a creator. Um, but then, yeah, you have such a wild history aside from comics, because then I look up like your bio and stuff, and it says you're a hypnotist or something like that with the circus. And I was like, all right, whenever I finally get this
I
guy on
don't
my
know.
podcast, it's going to be wild.
I don't know if it says circus. I don't think that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what it said, but that's what I got in my mind.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
sure,
you fill me
okay.
in.
It's on brand, I suppose, but no, it wasn't circus. Yeah, no, those are interesting books to start with for me. I mean, I've been doing comics now for a long time, and mainly in the independent space. But so my intro to comics, getting started, I did a book called The Damned for Oni Press. I did a book called The Sixth Gun for Oni Press, and I did a book called Harrow County for Dark Horse. Those were sort of my bigger, the intro opening volley into independent comics. And then I did a ton of stuff for Marvel, like Uncanny X-Men and Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe and Magneto. Did a bunch of stuff for DC along the way. So at this point, I've kind of worked for almost every every major publisher, and and I've worked, everything from superhero stuff to licensed tie-in stuff to my own creator-owned comics, which is really where all my efforts right now are focused on those creator-owned comics and some prose projects that I'm working on.
Can I
Yeah,
say that that's what I really find appealing about your work, Cullen? Is first of all, I love The Damned. I thought that was amazing. I'm
Thank
quite
you.
frankly surprised that that hasn't been made into some kind of a series because I think it could convert really well.
It
Um,
it's gone down that road so many times, and it always, something always
I feel
picks
like
it up.
there's so much more meat on that bone too, though. One of the aspects of The Damned. For those, by the way, for those watching this are not familiar, see if I do a good job with The Damned.
All right.
Is you have it's kind of a noir crime thing with the mob overtones, but in this world, the mob is basically demons, and there are competing factions within the mob, just like there would be in like Goodfellas or something along those lines. The main character, he keeps dying. I mean, like ugly, bad dying, and anybody who am I allowed to say this? What happens? Like how that mechanism
Sure,
works?
you can. Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's
okay.
pretty. You give that away pretty quick.
It's been a
spoiler
while.
alert.
It's been a while,
Yeah.
but it's a really cool mechanism because if somebody touches his dead body, all the wounds that would have killed him immediately accrue to them, and he's brought back. So he has these kind of like repeated exposures to the other side. And there's all kinds of things going on there related to family member. I don't want to, I want to be careful because I don't want to do any damage to somebody reading it. It's really, really a good book. That other side element, I feel like there's so much more that I would have wanted to have done. And in reading this, you kind of leave the idea that maybe you do it someday. I hope you do, Cullen, because I just
Yeah, I
think
mean
that's a really good product.
the plan has always been we've got Brian Hurt and Brian Hurt, the artist, and I have long had a much longer story in mind. We know where it goes, we know where it ends, and weirdly, for whatever reason, it just there's always some sort of strange stumbling block with the dam that keeps us from reaching that end goal. But it'll happen at some point. I may be a doddering old man or a more doddering older man when it happens, but it will finish up at some point.
Well, I hope it does because it's really good, and just want to congratulate you on that. And for those people who are interested in it, it is now available in a collected edition, which is the one that I have here.
That's everything that's come out so far of the dam is
Yeah,
in that book. Yeah.
it's so worth it. And like the cover price is $40. You can get it used at a used bookstore, and it's just a bargain. I mean, it really is. It's such a good read. I'm also a huge fan of your Six Gun. I have all of these volumes too. I won't haul them all out just to show you, but that's a creative. There's something about, like, I wanted to ask you about this if I can. There's something for me about the idea of mixing the supernatural with the Old West. It just feels like a really good fit, and I'm curious about your take on that just in general.
Yeah, I've always liked supernatural westerns. I liked weird westerns. The old Jonah Hex comics back in the day weren't necessarily supernatural. They weren't supernatural, but they were weird, and I liked that. And then Joe R. Lansdale jumped on and did his take on Jonah Hex, and those were absolutely supernatural comics, and I love those. Joe Lansdale wrote a novella called Dead in the West that I still read. I read at least once a year. I reread that thing. And the first short story I ever sold to a magazine was a weird Western that was absolutely a pastiche of Joe Lansdale's Dead in the West, but it never got published in the magazine. The magazine folded before it reached its publication date. But I've always just liked the supernatural Western. I think it's just an interesting setting for those kinds of stories, and in comics in particular, it offers a really interesting visual aesthetic even before the ghosts and mummies and other horrible things appear. There's something interesting to look at in that you're looking at these Old West characters and the attire and the setting.
No, I agree. I also think myself, bounce this off you. I think that when I think of the West, I think there's a lot of bad stuff that happened out there.
Oh yeah.
In terms of a lot of really bad things that people did to each other. So I feel like it's a place where it was like dipped in ghosts, just like dripping with ghosts in terms of the unavenged, the unresolved, the kind, you fill in the blank, on many things,
Yeah, no, it was, I would imagine it was, it was obviously a very, forget the sensationalized, the Hollywood glamour of the Westerns of the 50s and 60s. It was a bloody and violent and awful. I imagine, it was lawless. It was a lawless place, and people don't do well in lawless places.
I apologize, Max. I'm kind of fanboying a little bit.
No, yeah.
We actually have a connection. We met before, Cullen. I doubt if you remember it, but we met in Memphis one year. And this is when you were working with my friend Joe Picardo on Hexiles.
Wow.
And Joe actually worked on my series, The Shepherd, which is a supernatural series, before. And I just I was so excited and am so excited. I just think he tore it up for you in Hexiles, and I hope you get a chance to work with him again. I hope you had a great experience with him.
Yeah, Joe was great to work with. I mean, just a terrific artist. He's got such a cool uh, knack for page layouts and turning what could be sort of even these what in the hands of a lesser artist could be kind of a quiet, maybe even boring type of scene, and he can just blow it out into this real dynamic, these dynamic images so well.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He did that. Definitely did that for me. We used to always tease him. He's Joe Picardo is a Spanish artist. For those who don't know, he's a very good looking man. So we always tease him as being a GQ cover model, in addition to his artistic skills. So we always bust his chops about that. So
What was there's kind of two things I kind of want to go through, like a full arc or a full story from you today. That because from like my fan base and what I try to show people is like how someone breaks in to this industry and then like sort of the behind the scenes of the illusion of how things happen. And you are a perfect example of somebody that has you can tell the story of how your book became a major studio level movie, and I think at least more than once. And we'll get into like how far the Sixth Gun got into either a show or a movie, The Empty Man. But before we get to like that kind of thing, and also sort of like the behind the scenes of writing for the big two on licensed properties and things like that, and sort of what that kind of looks like. But before that is like, what did you do? Like before you started writing for Oni Press, like what were the first things you did? Were they shorts? Did you do creator owned black and white through like a no name publisher, self published? How did you truly from the very beginning get started?
Um, so my first start in getting published was all in short stories, all in prose, not in comics, because I didn't know how to submit to comics. And I went to school, college, to get a degree in creative writing because I knew I wanted to be a writer. I didn't. I just wanted to write. I wanted to tell stories. So with that degree, I got a job at a comic book store, and in a lot of ways, though, that was my big break into comics, because while I was working at that comic book store, one of my coworkers was Brian Hurt, an aspiring artist, and we immediately hit it off. We immediately started talking about doing stories together, about maybe creating something cool down the line, doing some comics, and it took 10 years for that to happen. Um, so it was great meeting a very talented artist, but we were kind of traveling down diverging paths, and we needed to, we both had to make livings and everything else. So it took almost 10 years for the two of us to work on a comic together. In the meantime, I think I did two short stories for a British magazine called Future Shock, I believe. I did two very short comics, and I did like a one-page comic for their one-page comic contest. Those books didn't pay anything. They didn't, it was just doing it just to do it.
Yeah.
And I can't honestly, I don't know if I did those stories before or after I sold The Damned, because so what happened was, um, it took us about almost 10 years for Brian and I to connect to do a comic together. We pitched a book to Oni Press and they shot it down immediately, and then we pitched The Damned to Oni Press and they picked it up immediately. Uh, it took a
Was that
little bit.
before did you pitch the idea or did you pitch finished pages?
Oh no, I
And
just
like how
pitched the
much of
idea.
the book? What?
I just pitched an idea. I didn't write a script.
Wow.
Yeah. I just put together. I think I wrote. So it was a 2 or 3 page script of the world and the characters, and I think I wrote 3 scenes, like so 9 to 10, 12 pages total, saying these are scenes you might see in the book. And I wrote like an action scene, and I wrote a talking scene. So I was just writing just different versions of what those pages would look like. So they picked it up from the pitch and the the couple of scenes that I had written. I don't even think Brian didn't do any finished pages. He did character sketches for it, but he didn't do any finished pages for it.
That's
Uh,
amazing. That's how strong that hook is.
yeah. So they took that, and it did take a little bit. So what I'm thinking probably happened was it took a while for the Damned to actually start rolling. Um, so I think maybe I did those short stories for the British magazine in between. So I mean, it's pretty unheard of in that the Damned sold just straight out the gate for me. That was
Yeah, yeah.
I'd submitted stuff to Marvel and DC, and those got either just never responded to, or got the form letter rejections. But this was the first real like big pitch I did was that. Well, the second, because we pitched another book that did get turned down.
And did you write anything else before that, as far as like novels, or did I
Just
miss that? Where you're saying you're
a
writing prose, or
ton of short stories in small press magazines, here and there. I mean, I did a lot of short stories, but no novel or anything like that.
That's amazing because
yeah, that
especially
is.
the dam being as big as it is, like I'm wondering when it got accepted, did a little part of you panic?
I don't remember feeling panic. I remember just being excited that the book was going to be made. Um, I remember thinking, well, that's it. I've broken in. It's all gravy now. And that was not the case. Um, because even after the Damned came out, I struggled after the Damned came out to to find additional work. It took a little bit.
Well,
From
I got
your
to tell you,
perspective, then.
go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, like, what was then, the next steps, or like, when did you feel as if you sort of, for example, when did you start getting work with, uh, Marvel, and like, did they reach out to you, or were you kind of just constantly pitching it from, like, always, like, to this day, or
So
how much was it sort of like people coming to you
so
in the beginning?
what I did, there was no coming to me. It was all me pitching. There was no one was coming to seek me out. Um, I did what I did do was I got a bunch of trade paperbacks of the Damned, or I either bundled up single issues. I can't remember, maybe a little bit of both, and I sent them to every editor that I could find at Marvel and at Marvel, at DC, I mean, just across the board. Every editor I sent copies of the books to so they could read it and see what I was about. I did finally get back. I heard back from one editor at Marvel who I remember I was at work and he called me and he said, "Hey, I read this book of yours, The Damned. I didn't really get it, but I thought maybe I'd call you and see if you wanted to write an issue of Iron Fist for me." And I was like, "Well, sure, I want to write an issue of Iron Fist." So I proceeded, and it was like, "All right, well, I don't know if you've ever heard of this artist." And he named Dan Brereton, who was probably at the time my favorite artist. And I was like, "Oh my, this is my dream come true." And it was a pure nightmare. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. The editor
Wow.
was We did not get along. This editor did not care for me, and I didn't care for him. I know other writers who've worked with this editor and think he's amazing, so it has to be just a something in between the two of us. But I still have it somewhere. I have like one of those moleskin notebooks that is filled just based on notes on my 30-page script for that issue of Iron Fist. The notes were absolutely ridiculous. He would wait till the last minute and give me these insane notes. He had no sense of time, no respect for anybody else's time, not mine, not the artist. He was bad mouthing the artist to me. He was bad mouthing the artist, me to the artist. He was a disaster. And I
Wow.
got done with that project, and I told my friends, I was like, well, that's it. I'll never work with Marvel again. I wouldn't work with Marvel for anything in the world. They're awful. And
Wow.
as far as I knew, that was just the way it was when you worked with Marvel. So I was done. So I just redirected my efforts back to my independent stuff. I did a couple of other indie books for Oni Press, and then I did a book called The Sixth Gun with Brian Hurt again. And The Sixth Gun kind of, it kind of got some heat on it, right as it came out. It was very well received. People really liked it, and that's when I started getting calls from other publishers. I started getting calls from, this was years after this project with with whatever his name was at Marvel. I got calls from Marvel to do some Deadpool short stories. I got calls from DC to do on Twitter of all places. I got a message from a DC editor saying he wanted me to write a 4 issue arc of Superman Batman. And so I started getting those, little work there, projects here and there. I started picking up more stuff at Marvel. DC was calling me. This was right before New 52 launched. So DC was calling me they wanted me to write 3 of the New 52 books. And
Do you remember what those were? Those three, off the top of your head?
so the ones that one was Grifter. I know Grifter was in the mix. Um, there was it was a Batman book, but it wasn't Batman. It
Hmm.
was, it was like one of the ancillary books. And then the other one, I don't even think we had decided what that was going to be. They were just like, we've got another book if you're up for it. And Marvel was asking me for work, so I called Axel Alonso, the editor in chief at Marvel, and I said, "Hey, just so you know, DC's offering me a lot of work right now, and I don't want to overcommit to anything, and I need you to know that." And he said, "All right, you're exclusive to Marvel as of right now. I'll make you exclusive to Marvel." And he made me exclusive to Marvel. I got in a fight with my boss the next day at work, and I quit. And I've been a full time writer ever since. Um, and and then it's just been, it's just gone, from there. Even the exclusive at Marvel, I've still felt like I was chasing work sometimes. I was still like, oh, I gotta really chase projects at Marvel to make sure they know I exist. um but So I was exclusive with Marvel for a couple of years, and then as soon as that exclusive died, it was weird. They didn't want to offer me another exclusive, but they started offering me so much more work. As soon as the exclusive was over, I started getting just tons of offers from Marvel. But at that point, I was working with everyone because I didn't, I liked telling stories. I enjoyed doing the work. Uh, I liked it. I liked Marvel when I found out it wasn't always. It was just that me and that one editor just didn't get along. Um, uh, and from that day forward, that's just been, you know, that's that's been what I was doing. So yeah, at one time I was writing more titles than anyone at DC and more titles than anyone at Marvel at the same time, plus the indie stuff I was doing.
I was gonna say, I was like, you have an insane body of work. Like even after all that stuff, even whenever
Yeah.
I started reading stuff, it was like, and and yeah, not to mention, yeah, the even more indie stuff. I remember I read something of yours that was about where I'm from in Alton, Illinois, and like the Piasaw bird. I don't remember what that was
Oh,
in,
that
but I remember reading
there
something
was
like that.
there was a short story I did about the Piasaw bird, and then we adapted it into a comic somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, and an anthology somewhere in because yeah, you're involved in so much that I don't even remember where it was, but I
yeah,
thought that was I remember that being funny. It was like wine coming from the
yeah.
for
That's
people who
that,
don't know, it's like a legend of a dragon basically where I'm from. Which does lead me into, in some of this stuff about your actual writing, does any of this stuff, for example, like the Empty Man, come from anything that you actually did research on like sort of real cults?
Oh, well,
Or
sure. Yeah, some of it, some of it. I can't say the Empty Man came. That's not where the original idea for the Empty Man came from. That original idea came from driving to Chicago, going to a convention with Brian Hurt. I was looking at these fences. I don't know if this inspired, and there's plastic tarp in the fences, and it was blowing, and it looked really creepy and eerie. And I just said, wouldn't a cool line be the Empty Man made me do it? And that was where the Empty Man came. I mean,
Hmm.
that's
simple as that.
yeah, that I mean, ideas aren't that difficult to be honest. I mean,
Well, it
ideas
is
are
funny that you say that because I remember thinking like the idea of sort of demons or entities getting in your head through thought, or like that, like just the idea of thinking of it, or even just reading about something and then sort of becoming possessed by it, has been something that I've attempted to write, and it's just so, you did it very well. Like to me it's like it's really difficult to grasp or like showcase that sort of cosmic inner horror, which, yeah, I then want to
well,
get into, sort of the process and the difference of like what you wrote on in the book that in the Boom book, the that I read. Did you have like more than one version of the Empty Man? I'm remembering like,
there were three Empty Man series that came out. So there was
and but
Empty
were they
Man, and
all connected in plot lines, or was one an
yeah, they were
offshoot or
all
something like?
no, they were all connected.
Okay. Because I think I only have read two of the three then. Because I like, and I don't think I read them in order. Because I remember thinking, oh,
That works with the Empty Man. I mean, let's be honest.
yeah, it somehow
It's
still
fine.
made sense. But I
Yeah.
remember, and then I watched the movie and was like, this doesn't match what I read really at all.
Well, it's not in the book you missed. I promise that.
um, So yeah, I was gonna see if you could fill me in on sort of from your perspective, from like basically your script to the book to then like the behind the scenes of getting them, because I've dipped my toe into filmmaking. I've produced independent films. I also am like in the process of just like the never ending like in development of my own books. But like you got it made through the studio level. And like I just, like what happened, like who wrote the script? Who approached who first? Who dropped it? Who did you think? Who, like, I know like how these stories go where it's like you're going along the line and then just it goes to zero and then it gets built back up again. Somebody new comes involved. So like from your perspective, how much were you involved in it, and like everything you can or are willing to share behind the scenes of that story from book to film?
I was involved enough, not as much as I would want to be now, probably. But I was involved enough that they kept me in the loop with everything. I saw all the versions of the script. I saw all the different cuts of the movie because there are several cuts of that movie.
Hmm.
Um, and I even wrote some of the dialogue. I mean, I'm not credited, but I wrote some of the dialogue and some of the scenes of the movie. Mainly, uh, there's a scene where they put a videotape in or a DVD or something, and it's playing like a message, and I wrote the dialogue of what they're saying on the message and stuff like that. But I'm not sure. So David Pryor wrote and directed the movie, and he was the first, as far as I know, the first director they really talked to about it. Like he came on, he said, "Hey, I want to do this," and it was off to the races, and he was there through the whole thing. Like I said, there were many different cuts of this movie. All of them very different from what finally got released. And it was a point where I thought that movie just wasn't going to come out. I thought it was just going to sit on a shelf forever and never be seen at all. And then they released it right at lockdown for COVID. So like the worst time for a movie to come out,
Yeah,
they
I remember
they
like,
released it. Yeah, and so
unfortunately
it
that
kind of
like,
it came out. The the marketing campaign for it was fine, but it made it seem like a very different kind of movie than it was. And
Yeah.
uh and it came out and kind of just went under the radar. It was the last. It has the distinction of being the last movie to have the 20th Century Fox logo on it. So it was the final 20th Century Fox movie, and it came out and it just vanished, and then it got sort of it's kind of attaining sort of a cult status now. People are finding it and realizing, oh, this isn't the movie we thought it was. This movie's actually got something interesting to say and is doing something interesting. I think the movie is pretty great. I don't think it's a great adaptation. I think it's a great movie that's not necessarily a great adaptation. And
I'd agree
I
with
don't think
that.
I don't think
It's a
David
good
wanted
movie.
I don't think David wanted it to be an adaptation. I think he had something in mind and he plugged some empty man concepts into it.
Yeah, that's a good way of phrasing it. It's like it takes the general idea sort of, and that's about it. Like,
Yeah.
but I do, whenever I saw it, I was like, and I remember the campaign because I remember knowing that you had written it, and I remember like reading because where I'm from in St. Louis, parts of that film were, if not all, I don't remember, but were like
It was
took
pretty much
place in
it
St.
was all
Louis,
filmed in St. Louis.
yeah, and so like me being active in like writing and film and locally, everyone knew about it, and I was like, super excited, and I was like, this is going to be super cool. And then, and I remember seeing the campaign for it, and I remember thinking like, that's interesting because I remember in the book you do have sort of like monsters or like scorpion monsters and
Yeah,
like or just like, and then so in the marketing campaign they do it to where it's like they imply that it's sort of like conjuring a ghost or a demon or
right.
something, teenagers conjuring a ghost,
Yeah,
and that it's sort of your typical boogeyman supernatural horror. And then when you watch it you're like much more of like a noir mystery psychological thriller and not what they advertise it as. And it's like I feel like if they, of course hindsight, but it was just like if maybe they showcased it a bit more. It had a great marketing campaign because it did like hook you. But yeah, then that's just not exactly what it was.
yeah.
And
It was
yeah,
a
it probably just and I remember the poor timing as well, to where it was just like,
The
oh dang,
timing's
like
really what did it. The timing more than anything kind of did the movie in or did the movie dirty. But
but yeah,
but
I
hey,
do still see clips of it like it is getting a resurgence or like a cult like following
yeah,
as it should.
people. There are a lot of folks who really like it, and it's like I said, it's a movie people just aren't expecting, I guess, and they don't expect what they're getting from it because it's got some. I think the movie has meat on its bones in terms of what it is. But it came out, I think, right after there was a movie called, I don't know, another horror movie, man movie, like not Slender Man, but
Oh, the
the
thin
Bye Bye
man
Man,
or the tall
Bye
man.
Bye Bye Man or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
And so people are like, oh, it's just another one of those. And those two movies couldn't possibly be more different.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, but did also with the six gun, that also was turned into something, right? But maybe was it unreleased or what's the story with the production of the six gun?
Well, the Six Gun, just like the Damned, was always in some has always been in some state of production. I mean, before the comic came out, it was in a state of production, and
Wow.
eventually they did shoot a pilot for it. The pilot was done for NBC, so there's a pilot in existence, and it just didn't get picked up. It didn't go forward from the pilot at that point. It was a very, very expensive TV show at the time for NBC, especially, and then especially for a period piece kind of story. And
Yeah.
but it's since that time it remains in play, and there's still people trying to make it. So maybe it will. There's a chance it will come again, right? But yeah, there was a pilot shot for it, but it didn't it didn't make it past the threshold.
Okay, now that makes sense because now I'm remembering I was researching Pedro Pascal, and I
Yeah,
remember like seeing like his body of work was like the Six Gun, and I was like,
yeah,
what? I didn't know they made a Six Gun show, and then so that makes sense. It was like they filmed one episode, and then it didn't get picked
yeah.
up to actually air.
Yeah, they filmed the pilot, but it didn't get past the pilot stage.
Did you get to see the pilot?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Were you? How did you feel as the writer? I mean, were you happy with the general take that they had, or?
I liked it. I thought it was every pilot to me needs a pilot's like where you get the kinks, you kind of work out the bugs in the system. And I thought there were a few bugs in it, but there's so much stuff in it that I really did like, and that I could see people like. There's the scenes where they have the fourth gun, which calls the dead, and they shoot the ground, and zombies are popping up out of the ground as he's shooting the ground. It looked awesome, even in
Yeah,
a slightly unfinished state. It looked great, and I liked a lot of the characters. I really love Pedro Pascal's character in the show. He and Aldous Hodge played a pair of villains in the show, and they were great. Um, I liked, there were a lot of the production elements I really liked, and so I liked a lot of it. And we saw it in George R. R. Martin has a theater in Santa Fe, and he got permission to show the pilot in his theater to several. He showed it several times over the course of 3 days, and I sat in every audience with it, and the audiences loved it. I mean, they really went crazy for it. Uh, and that was bittersweet. I was excited that they
sure.
really loved this idea, but it made me sad that they weren't going to get to see the show because I think they really dug it, and I can see why they did. There was a lot of good stuff in that show. Uh,
Sure.
and Ryan Condal, who was the screenwriter, went on to work on House of the Dragon, and I think he's heavily involved in that stuff now. It had a cool cast. Yeah, there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is. I mean, the
Um,
series in general is excellent. So
and it obviously changed stuff from the series, but it was pretty true to the series. I mean, while it was changed from the comic, it wasn't changed to such a degree that you wouldn't recognize, oh, this is the comic. This is based on the Six Gun comic.
yeah,
Um, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, it's one of those projects that has always been in some stage of development.
As the people that basically take it into development or whatever, do you have your own like personal agent, or is this a lot of the times through your publishers, or like how does that get started? Or who reaches out to you, and like have you ever pushed for it, or have you ever tried to write your own screenplays for some of your stuff or anything, or
Yeah,
tried to produce the films yourself?
yeah. It's different for different books, right? It depends on your contract. It depends on the publisher. It depends on the contract you set with that publisher. The Six Gun had a producing partner or an agency already in place to kind of make those deals, and a lot of the books I have the publisher has their own agents who handle those things, and then a lot of my own creator owned stuff I handle. I have an agent who will handle those things and try to make the sale. I've written I wrote a pilot for Harrow County that was in play for a while, and I wrote the pilot for that for the network that was trying to that wanted to make it, decided Harrow County wasn't for them. So I wrote that one. Um, and I've written some screenplay stuff since then, and though I can't talk much about it, I'm in the middle of a financing situation with another screenplay that I wrote, and I'll be one of the producers on once that all triggers here in the next several weeks, and that is me knocking on wood.
Good luck with that. Yeah, that'd be
Heck
awesome.
yeah. No, yeah. So now on to sort of the questions of with the amount of work that you're writing, what do you do, or do you even care? Like outside of writing, do you do anything to promote yourself or your work? I know that, I follow you and I'm part of like the Cullen Bunn fandom on like Facebook groups, but do you do anything else like that to sort of, individually try to grow your audience, or do you even bother with that anymore and just let the work speak for itself?
Oh, if I let the work speak for itself, no one will ever find anything. And it's and that's not. I'm not trying to belittle the work. I'm just saying it's uh for most creators, not all, most creators, it is the biggest part of my job. The most difficult part of my job is not the writing. It's not coming up with
Yeah.
ideas. It's not scripting. It's figuring out how to market it. And I've been not great at it and this is me. I came from I was in marketing for years before I became a comic book creator, a full-time comic creator. Marketing comics is hard work and it takes a lot of time. And I still don't know that I do it. I definitely know that I don't do it right. And I'm trying to learn, some new methods and trying some new things. I started working with a new publisher, Ignition Press, that I'm doing a lot of creator-owned books with. But working with them has afforded me a chance to not work on so many comics. I can work on fewer if I want to, and that opens my schedule up to do a few different things or try some different things. And so I've done things like I've got a YouTube channel called the Colonoscopy, where I talk about different horror movie subgenres and make recommendations, and that's a way just to promote me as a creator. Right? It's not a salesy thing. It's just me talking about horror because I love it. Um, so I do some of that stuff. I do my newsletter that I put out constantly. I do a lot of these interviews. So I'm always doing something to promote. And somewhere very close by is a notebook, another one of those notebooks full of ideas of this is what I need to do to start promoting myself a little better. And and it's just but executing on those ideas is tough. Uh, that's the big lesson I learned in writing. The writing part for me, that's the easy part. That's the gravy. It's all the marketing is the stuff that's throwing me around like a rag doll right now is figuring that out.
Well, that I'm happy to hear you say that because Uh, I agree with you, and I was unsure if everybody had to struggle. Like and even someone that I would argue is one of the most prevalent horror writers in comics. I would put you in sort of the A list of that. And it's like if you're still, the hard part is marketing. Okay, well then that's good to know, because I've been telling everybody like, yeah, unfortunately, this is the real world of like writing. You spend forever trying to cross that threshold. It's like writing the script is finishing high school, and like finishing the book is like graduating from your bachelor's degree, and then it's like, all right, now you have to go get a job, and you're like, oh, well, I don't even know how to do that. I
Yeah,
thought I was supposed to learn that in school. It's like, nope. Now you got to
yeah,
go actually compete with people and get, and the cutthroat world of actually interviewing and getting the jobs is like getting a publisher and all that. It's like, and then once you get the publisher, now you have to market, and now you have to fight to get seen.
yeah. There are comic creators who don't have to market. Their books are going to sell themselves. They don't have to do a lot. I mean, they still have to do some, but they don't have to engage in the grind of it. That's rarefied air. But for me, it's always been just like I said earlier. Oh, I published my first comic. That's it. I'm in. No, no, no. Then the struggle's getting another comic.
Yeah.
But now, getting the book out there. That's I mean, it sounds flippant to say it's such a small part of it to get the book out.
Yeah.
Getting the book out is. a minor piece of that puzzle, because then it's getting people to read the book, to find the book, first of all, to just find it and read it. It's for me, it's always been a grind, and I know I'm not alone, because I talk to a lot of other creators. We're always talking about, how do we do this? How do we, you know, how do we promote ourselves? It's hard. It's hard work. And I mean, just yesterday, I had to go somewhere. I went off site, out of my office, and I sat down with a notebook and just sat there and did brainstorming and mind mapping. How do I promote my work? What do I do? What am I doing now that's not working? What is working? What can I, how can I manage the time? What do I have the skill and the bandwidth and the appetite for? Because it's tough. That's I don't, look, for someone who's trying to break in, for me to say writing the comic is the easy part and getting it published is the easy part, that's probably going to make some people, it might rub people the wrong way, because I know how I was when I was trying to break in and it wasn't happening. It's the easy part. Getting people to read the book, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And it's not reading, it's finding. It's getting people to find the book, to get it on a shelf so that someone can see it, and then getting them to talk about it. It is a brutal part of the job. And it's not that right now for me, percentage wise, but it needs to be at least 50%, and probably more like 60% of my job right now. Is what it should be.
How do you do with conventions? I've done a lot of conventions since I got into my first book was published in 2015, and I've done a lot of, for years, about 20-25 conventions a year.
Oof.
Now I'm at more like 12 to 15, because it's tough. I try to do at least once a month.
Yeah. No. It's, you have to. I have cut. In recent years, I've cut way back on conventions, but I've started ramping back up, and I think I have, like, for this year, I think I have eight conventions in mind, or that I'm scheduled to go to.
Yeah.
I think they are, the right conventions are vital. Now, there's some conventions that you could probably not, that aren't going to get you a lot of groundwork, but I do think that if you go to a convention and you do it right and you present your work, I know that if I sell someone my book, they're going to buy another book, and they're going to, and I can make fans that way, and it's probably to my own detriment that I haven't been doing conventions as much as I should.
There's only so many hours in the day too. So
yeah, there's only so much time.
There's
only so much time, but I need to be doing more of these, and so I think I have 8 on my calendar right now, and I was, until this film thing came through, I was going to try to get a few more over for the rest of the year, but I think I probably won't pursue or think too much about conventions until this project's over. But what I will do, and I did this last year a little bit and really loved it, I'm going to do more with, like, book tours, where I go to, comic shops, bookstores, and just make appearances there and do, shorter signings there. So while I'm not going to be adding a lot of conventions, I am going to be trying to add several bookstore signings onto my list for the rest of the year.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna dive into more, like, of this. You were saying at the very beginning, like, you pitched the Damned as essentially no artwork, character designs. How many of the books that you're doing now do you sort of front the costs, or, like, create the books before knowing a publisher, and how much of it do you basically pitch the idea, get the green light from the publisher, and then move forward? Because most of us, and a lot of the people I talk to, they've never experienced idea to then and a contract to then creating it. It's always been basically the more you produce, the more likely you are to get published. So you're basically fronting at least the first issue to try to pitch that to publishers, and if they don't bite, then you basically go the self-publishing route. How much for you is actually like getting the green light, then go, and as opposed to just full steam ahead per title?
Well, first of all, had I had any wherewithal in my younger days, I would have been doing that. I would have been going out there, creating my own comics, paying for them to be made, and fronting the costs and getting book after book out there. And I think I would have probably broken in sooner had I been doing that. I genuinely did. So I feel like I went about it a little badly. Um, that said, and again, here's my rarefied air. None of my pitches have ever had artwork associated with them beyond
Wow.
maybe some character sketches, and in most cases, no artwork at all. In most cases, for my pitches, no artist attached at all, and it is, and now that comes from the fact that I have produced comics and I've done it. And publishers know that if they hire me to do this book, they know it's going to get finished.
Yeah,
They know they know I can do it. So I don't have to prove that I can complete the book anymore. I've done that, and I got lucky that the way I did with the Dam, that I was able to say, hey, look, I finished this series, the Six Gun, 50 something issues. We finished that series. But I have also been very lucky in that I have always been able to just pitch the idea. And in some cases, my pitches are a paragraph. In some cases, they're a couple of sentences. I'm like, what do you think of this idea? And that's always, I know that I am lucky, and that is
He's
not the
saying, by the way,
yeah,
Max,
we're
he's
not
saying
worthy. Like
the
that's
truth of the
amazing.
matter is there's a seventh gun, and the power of the seventh gun is the pitch.
yeah.
That's what's
Well,
going on here.
I've I've always thought that and my pitches are a couple of pages. My typical pitch is a couple of pages, and but I have definitely pitched to my publishers and said, "Hey, what do you think of this idea? Dracula is a cowboy." And they say, "Oh, we like that Dracula is a cowboy idea." And then I'll take that and turn it into a couple of pages and give them that. And that's always worked for me, because I'm like, okay, I know you're interested now. I've got you because you saw Dracula as a cowboy, and that hooked you. And now I can write a pitch, and that'll seal the deal. And then the publisher and I will talk, and we'll find an artist together. And in some cases, I have an artist who wants to do a book with me. In some cases, I don't have an artist, and the publisher will help me find the artist.
That's
There was
amazing. But
there
yeah,
was a time where I had like a 20 page document that was just filled with paragraph ideas, and I would just send that to publishers and say, which ones do you like? And
Wow.
they would come back and say, hey, we really like this one. And it would go, a lot of the comics I have out there started as those, short ideas that I then expanded.
when you saying like, oh, we like this one like super high concept half of a sentence thing. I did the same thing one time to where like it sent, and I actually have downloaded. I think whenever like through your Patreon, like you showed some of your pitches that you had sent in the past. And I remember like doing the same thing where I'm writing like, okay, multiple pages, sort of full synopsis, arc by arc, issue by issue kind of things. And then I remember one of the first responses I got back was almost just like a joke where I was just like, or I could just do like a giant spider sits in the backpack of a kid. And they're like, we want that one. And I
Yeah.
was like, what?
What you'll
Like,
find, yeah, what you'll find is the publisher always goes for the one you think they're never going to be interested in. The one that you're like, this is just a throwaway. No, that's the one they're going to want.
maybe there's some science to that. Some
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is about pitching, but I do think, we talk about where, how do you get your ideas? I think people are afraid of the dumb idea, and that's bad. I think there are creators out there who want to come up with the perfect idea, and they will just beat themselves up trying to come up with the one perfect idea. No, you got to come up with the 20 really stupid ideas. And I promise you that in those stupid ideas, there's a nugget of something you're really going to latch onto and you're going to like. Or in one of those stupid ideas, a publisher is going to say, oh, yeah, I like that one. I mean, I think that's how I try to come up with at least an idea every day. Most of them are really dumb ideas. Um,
Still good.
I'll keep
it
doing
keeps
it.
it
It's
keeps your
honestly
Yeah.
brain it keeps your brain moving. It keeps you thinking, and hopefully can
If
you come up with something great.
What would you say, like, of the books, like, of the marketing tactics, in a sense, or promotional tactics you've done? What was sort of the one thing that moved the needle? For example, with me, it was something I had no control over, to where basically an influencer had like created a whole video about one of my books. Do you make efforts to like send your books to reviewers or anybody to like obviously your books, because of the merit or how good they are, they get into these articles of like the best horror books of that year or the summer or whatever. But do you make any efforts, or do you know how which of those actually mattered to you? Like, what was the thing where like this is where you start to see some exponential like fan base growth?
It's hard to say. I know with the six gun, we really um we really pushed with podcasts, and there was a lot of podcast support for the six gun, and I do think that helped. Um, at the end of the day, the six gun, for instance, we really pushed with retailers because we realized if retailers get behind the book and they talk about it, the book sold. And there were stores that were selling more copies of the six gun than they were selling of some of the big two titles at the time, because the retailers were behind it and they supported it and they were talking about it. So yeah, podcasts. I still try to reach out um, to as many people as I can when every book comes out, and say, hey, I've got a new book coming out. Let's talk about it. I try, like when my novel came out in November, I tried to do a lot more on the blog touring side of things, like writing articles for other blogs to promote the book. And I don't know that I handled that as well as I could, and I'm gonna revisit that concept here in the next few weeks, doing more of that kind of thing. Um, Sending copies to reviewers, though, it's a big deal. I've always hated, and I never do it anymore. I just don't do it anymore. I hate sending my book to other creators and asking for a blurb. I can't stand it.
uh
It makes my stomach turn thinking about it. I don't mind if people send it to me. That's fine. I don't ever want to send a book to another creator and say, "Hey, would you want to give me a blurb?" And I know that's a big part of the business. I know it's a thing that's got to be done. Lord, do I hate it. It just I don't. There's something about it that gives me the ick, and so I don't do that as much as I should because it freaks me out.
I'm right there with you. I just reaching out to other, even like right now, like trying to promote my ICDB, which thank you for creating a profile on there. I feel just weird being like, hey, and also like the whole reason I designed this thing is to help everybody promote each other and like build portfolios, but I still feel the ick of like going to my colleagues and partners being like, hey, check this out, or and I'm not even asking like
Yeah.
do anything to write a blurb or anything. And I've also felt weird doing that as well about my books, of like especially anybody that's like if I came to you, someone that's essentially a celebrity in the space, and being like, hey, yeah, remember we talked that one time,
Right.
it'd be really helpful if you said this. It's just like so the desperate feeling or
You
something
you
like that,
have
or it
to.
just like ruins the, instead
It,
of a friendship, it's like a you're a stepping stone in my career or something like that. It just makes it more transactional and, like you said, icky.
Yeah, you have to do it to promote your stuff. That's part of the business. I'm just not good at that. I don't like doing that. Um, I don't not I'm not a good networker with other creators because I don't want people to think I need something from them or want something from them. I'd rather people want to talk to me just because they want to talk to me, or want to, or for people to know I just want to talk to them because I want to talk to them. Um, so I get real uncomfortable with that side of the business.
I
Well, I
totally
would
get
write
you
a
on that.
blurb for you in a heartbeat. I love your stuff. I
Well,
really
thank
do. I think you're a very talented writer, and like I said at the beginning, one of the things I really appreciate about you is your creation of the creator-owned stuff, and that's I thought it was ironic. Maybe I missed something, but with Marvel and stuff like that, I just thought it was ironic some of the characters they had you write. Like if I would have been a Marvel editor, I would have said, "How about Ghost Rider? How about some of these
yeah,
supernatural,
yeah.
that's
Look,
I wouldn't have picked Deadpool. Not
I
for
tried to
you.
make
I
I
mean,
tried to make that stuff happen, but that
Doctor
was
Strange. Like
yeah,
our your it's interesting your story Arcana Royale.
yeah,
There are scenes in there that are like Doctor Strange all over the place, especially where she's walking into this alternate,
yeah.
dimension where the card games are going to take place. And I'm thinking to myself, that would have been a character I would have.
Yeah, I've tried to tilt those when I don't know why that's always been such a a non-starter really for me at Marvel or DC or the supernatural characters.
Yeah.
Um,
I would for DC, I would say Ragman for you. I would definitely like
Ragman,
you,
all right.
Or the Spectre. Both those two characters, I think you'd kill.
I tend to like all the I like if someone asked me just yesterday, what are your dream projects that have never happened, and it's all the DC and Marvel supernatural characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the monsters, it's all the but yeah, I just that is a something that I just can't seem to get a hold
I
of.
think you'd kill. I'd love to see you do Ghost Rider. Have you ever read the original Ghost Rider, like the first
Oh yeah,
one?
sure.
It's like awful. It's
Yeah.
awful. I think personally. I mean, it's just one of the dumbest books I've. I literally closed it. And I thought to myself, well, I don't think you're going to get a dumber story than that. That's pretty stupid.
Well,
And
I
the
don't think
concept
we can
is
be
cool,
friends
but
now. I don't think we can talk anymore. No, no, I get that. I can see why someone would say I love those just because of the time I was reading it. Obviously, it's they were products of their era, and I got
also they're
close on
writing to a different audience. They're right.
right,
Let's face it. They're writing to an 8 to 12-year-old boys
right,
who are just wanting somebody to punch somebody.
right,
And
yeah,
it's really unfair, kind of, to compare that with what we're doing. We're really writing to an adult audience now.
yeah.
You
I
know.
got close on Ghost Rider, or I thought I was close. Like that, Marvel's like, "Hey, we want you to do Ghost Rider," and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And they said, okay, so write your Ghost Rider pitch and send it to this editor because he's going to be handling it. And I did all that. And the editor messages me and says, I don't understand. I've had someone working on the new Ghost Rider book for months now. And I was like, so they didn't, it was one hand not knowing what the other hand was doing.
Yeah.
And there was already someone doing Ghost Rider. So that didn't happen for that reason. So,
I was gonna say, I was like, I'll bet it's a lot of political or like inside, baseball of who's contracted to what or something like that. It's not so much as they just didn't think you creatively weren't a fit.
no, someone literally had already been working on the book for months. So it was already in progress and they just didn't know. So that was a weird one. But yeah, it's navigating those waters, the Marvel and DC waters are is can be a challenge for if that's like if that's your end goal of that's your dream is to write for Marvel and DC. It's there's a whole new set of challenges that appear with that. It can be a lot of fun, it can be really cool, but just be ready.
Um, I on my kind of final note, unless you have things that you want to dive into, you don't have to go into detail on this, but in a general broad scope, you are a full-time, full-blown writer, and
That's what they tell
I'm
me.
I'm just curious, like, uh, how does that break down into sort of like I guess your different revenue streams, because I always argue or like tell people that you have to have a lot of different ones. You can't rely on sales. And I'm just curious, like, let's just say there's like the actual book sales and royalties or whatever. How much outside of that are you doing that's like, writing for, I don't know, other people or creating merchandise or doing your own thing at comic conventions? Or like, what are your revenue streams from your perspective?
Um, I mean, it's a good question. I would, at this point, I have to say, uh, the vast, the biggest part of that pie is writing comics. What I get paid to write scripts, and we can roll in royalties into that, and then that's going to be my biggest. By far the biggest part of the pie. Conventions then where it'd be a tiny little slice, and then other projects. Well, and that's comics. And then last year I did my novel, so that was there's a pie from writing other kinds of writing. There's comic writing, my novel or prose is a slice. Um, Convention's a tiny slice. I don't really do a lot of other stuff. I don't, if I'm hired to write a screenplay or to do something like that, so that would be a slice. But that's not money I can necessarily count on.
Yeah.
If it happens, it happens. And then
The,
there's definitely a slice that comes from uh, adaptations, media adaptations, companies wanting to option your books or try to do something with them. There's a piece of that as well.
so it is kind of like the more you write, the more you make. Or so you are just like constantly being like, all right, what I need
Oh yeah,
ideas to
for,
grasp.
for sure. I have to write comics right now to pay my bills. So that's the most of it for me. I am a working comic book writer, and that I have to get comic books churned. I have to have the projects. The time that would scare me, what would scare me is the day that comes that there are no new comics on the horizon for me to write. Like if I look over, it's like, do I have any? What's the next project? And it's blank. Then I'm going to be scared uh,
Oh, yeah.
because I pretty much always want something in the pipeline to work on.
Yeah, that makes
Do
sense.
you do you have any hot takes about the industry or the future? Or like, what's your take on the whole comics are changing or dying or AI and any of that kind of stuff? Do you actually have fears of like that comics are not selling as well as they should, or like you actually seeing like trends change to where it does give you scares?
Well, yeah, I mean it's always a consideration. I mean but comics have been dying for 50 years now, right? The comics have been dying. I think things are changing. I think comics has to figure out how to attract and maintain new readership, and we're talking American comics. I
Yeah.
think we have to figure out how to market to the readers and get them to actually pick up the books and and to the and to react with an enthusiasm for the books that are coming out. I mean, there are a lot of books out there that are great, and it's getting the attention on those books that publishers and creators are going to have to embrace more fully. Um, and there are publishers who are doing those things. It's just it's changing rapidly, and I don't know what comics are going to look like in 10 years. I mean there'll be something. They might be different. They might mutate into something slightly different. I'm not worried about AI. I mean, yes, I'm worried that AI is a problem, but I also am not worried that I'm going to get replaced by AI unless people just want to read a bunch of really terrible comics. Because AI, I mean, it's never going to be able to write a good comic. And it just like it can't write decent prose. I can pick it out as soon as I see it. I can as soon as I hear it or see it in an email. I see the AI and you can tell it's AI generated. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's what I've always said about creators. I don't have any competition. There's no competition for me as a comic writer because no one writes the way I write. I don't write the way someone else writes. I don't, we all write differently. So the only person that I'm running against is me. And AI is not going to write a comic the way I write a comic. So if I'm not worried about an actual flesh and blood, talented creators taking work from me, I'm not going to worry about AI taking work from me either. I mean, it's just I think it's sad that it is tricking people into the notion that they're creating something because they're not, and they're definitely not creating anything good.
I'd agree with that. This has
It,
been great. I think I've covered the main bases I wanted to cover. What do you want to talk about, or what did you whether it's promote or just like shout to
yeah.
the void or tell the newcomers what they what what was your biggest lesson in comics or whatever.
Oh well, the lesson is it's gonna be a grind. You're gonna it's a grind and it's work. And I'm not suggesting anyone works my schedule because it's my schedule's only works for me. And I think you can't duplicate what I do. You got to find the schedule that works right for you. Don't try to work as hard as I do. I mean, it only works because of my particular sickness. Um, but just expect the grind and expect that, if you get a comic out, that's just step one. That, you need to immediately you should have already been working on your next comic when that first one comes out. You need to keep, the momentum will help you. Um, Other than that, I would just say, look, if you want to know more about me, you can go to my website, it's cullenbunn.com. And from there, you can subscribe to my newsletter. I just put out a book, a digital ebook called How to Write Comics the Cullen Bunn Way, where I just go into all my thoughts on writing comics, and I included sample scripts, sample proposals, sample outlines. All of those things are in that book. If you want to try something that's not a comic, my novel, Bones of Our Stars, Blood of Our World is out. And if you're not usually a prose reader, I still think you'll like it because it moves. It's a very rapid moving book. It's very accessible, even if you're not usually the kind of person who wants to read a book without pictures. And and then other than that, I just recently started a group, a charitable organization called the Midnight Lantern Foundation, where we are helping families in need. We're providing gifts and for holidays and birthdays and things like that. But all of our gifts are focused on horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And you can visit that at midnightlantern.org if you want to check that out and learn more about that. So it's it's a very busy time, and I'm happy to be busy at this. Sometimes I need the busyness just to keep me distracted from everything else.
Do you do any horror conventions or like stuff that's like focused in Halloween time or anything like that?
So I'm doing. Uh, I like a good horror convention, and until maybe a few years ago, I had not done any convention for fun in nearly 20 years. Like just going to a convention to enjoy myself, that was unheard of. But I did go to a horror convention a couple of years ago just for fun and had a blast. And now, and since then I've gone to a few just as an attendee, just to have fun at the convention. Um, this year I'm doing one convention that is definitely only that's horror focused, which is Nightmare Weekend in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm doing that it's in October. Yeah. So and
Cool.
I'm gonna do my best to add more of those kind of shows to my calendar.
Yeah, I've wanted to. I haven't done anything that's like genre focused, but I was like, man, you would be perfect for that. And
There's
I hear that those are almost better or sort of like a way to break out of the comics group or sort of subgroup and into a broader spectrum, especially for indie creators because people can latch onto that. I feel like a lot more, and people that
oh
aren't
yeah.
into comics get reminded like, oh, cool, there's comic books are still a thing.
Right. They still make these? Let's yeah. It's yeah, they're a blast, and I do know some indie creators who set up at a few horror conventions and always I mean they keep setting up at them, which tells me okay, they're doing well enough at them to continue to do them again.
Yeah, if it works, yeah, keep going.
Right.